The seeds of the United Methodist Women were planted in 1869 by 8 women. Today, 146 years later, there are over 800,000 members, and United Methodist Women is the largest nonprofit organization in the United States. In 1869, women and children were legally classified as chattel, and the plight of women in foreign countries was deplorable. 2 missionary wives, home on furlough from India, spoke to a group of 8 women in Boston. They detailed the desperate spiritual and physical needs of women there. A male doctor could not treat women, and schooling for girls was nearly unheard of. The missionary wives stressed the need for single, trained, and dedicated women for medical and educational work.
In 1869, Methodist missionaries and their wives had returned home from India. While there, missionary wives had been stunned to learn that it was deemed inappropriate for the native women to be seen by a male doctor. At the time, males dominated the medical profession. When a group of 8 Methodist Episcopal women heard this, they were in disbelief and knew they had to do something about it. On a dark and stormy night, they gathered to figure out what to do. It was decided they would send a woman doctor to India. With faith and determination, they wrote to women all across the United States, informing them of their plan and asking for their assistance. In a short amount of time, they had raised enough money to send the first female missionary to India. These women sent out the first female missionaries. Today, United Methodist Women continue their legacy by supporting over 300 mission projects all around the world.
Those first 8 women called another meeting of women, wrote a constitution, and organized the Methodist Women's Foreign Missionary Society. By November in 1869, the newly formed organization raised funds and sent Isabella Thorburn, an educator, and Dr. Clara Swain, a doctor, to India. Miss Thorburn began a school in Lucknow, which expanded to include Isabella Thorburn College, the first women's college in Asia. Dr. Swain began medical work that resulted in the establishment of the first women's hospital in Asia. Both of these institutions are still serving the people of India. Between 1879 and 1884, these Lady Aid societies had become powerful, independent women's organizations, sending hundreds of missionaries all over the world and supporting many projects. The Reedley area was surveyed and plotted by U.S. Army teams and contract surveyors as early as the 1850s. The Homestead Act of 1862 permitted settlers to acquire land by building a simple dwelling with minimal improvements. Civil War hero Thomas Law Reed settled in this area in the mid-1800s. By 1886, he was farming 12,000 acres of wheat between what is now Reedley and Smith Mountain. In the summer of 1888, the Southern Pacific Railroad Company crossed the Kings River, opening trade routes to all points along the Pacific coast and across the vast midsection of our country to eastern marketplaces. Reed and the Southern Pacific collaborated in establishing the fledgling town of Reedley. Like a giant magnet, Reedley attracted a diverse group of people with one common purpose. Here, they would meld themselves into a new community. The town grew rapidly, and by June 1890, there was a population of about 175 residents. These settlers had families to rear, and they looked to both public and private institutions to help them in their quest for proper training. The organization of a school district began as soon as the town was platted, and the private sector began sowing the seeds for spiritual guidance. The Baptist Church was organized in 1888, followed by the United Brethren Church in 1889, and the Methodist Episcopal Church in 1890. The religious scene in Reedley was set for more than a decade before other denominations organized. Reverend Oliver Spencer Fromby and his wife Sarah arrived in Reedley in 1891. The two were a team of capable leaders, and it wasn't long before they developed a strong Methodist congregation. The Frombys met at the University of the Pacific in Stockton. He was a mathematics professor, and she was a student and tutor. They married on June 12, 1860, the day Sarah graduated from UOP. Sarah's parents were staunch and faithful Methodists, and she began her religious work at age 16, gathering her regular students together on Sundays for religious instruction. In the words of one of her former colleagues,
Mrs. Framby stands out in my mind as an ideal teacher and woman. If at the final day of judgment people receive reward for good done in this world, certainly Mrs. Framby's will have a bright place in the hereafter. J.C. Moreland, the Portland Academy and Female Seminary.
The first church building was dedicated on September 11, 1892, and 9 months later, Sarah Frombys thought the time had come to organize a home and foreign missionary society. Supporting foreign missions and working to prevent suffering of others had always been an important aspect of her life. We can only surmise that Sarah, had she not met and married Oliver, might have accepted the charge of Jesus to go into the world and preach the gospel to all people. One Sunday in June 1893, Sarah spoke to the Methodist Episcopal congregation about home missions.
Mrs. Framby's, wife of Reverend Framby's of Traver, entertained the congregation of the Methodist Episcopal Church last Sunday on the subject of home missions. Mrs. Framby's is a pious lady and a very zealous worker in the home missionary cause. She is an excellent reader and a good speaker, and presented the subject in a forceful and convincing manner. After service, a mission was formed with a membership of about 20. Reported in the Reedley Exponent, Thursday, June 15, 1893.
This initial group of Methodist Episcopal women began meeting monthly. Between meetings, they collected nickels and dimes, probably collected in empty sugar bowls at home, to be given as love offerings in support of foreign missions. These women were also vitally interested in the home front. They especially felt that there was a great need for a parsonage.
The ladies came along and decided we must have a parsonage. So the Ladies' Home Missionary Society got together, and we bought the 2 lots next to the church on 13th and F Streets. We paid $75 for them. Mrs. Mallory was the president then. Life went on as it does, society dinners and ice cream parties, until we got out of debt. Mrs. Bell Miles.
All those dinners and ice cream socials helped finance the building of the parsonage, which was completed in 1902 at the cost of $1,200. The town grew and the church grew. During the 1920s, it soon became evident that a larger church home was needed to house the many activities that had become part of the organization, not to mention a larger sanctuary to house the worshipers. In 1920, lots were purchased at 12th and F Streets, and building began on a fine new church. Throughout the 1920s, the Ladies' Home Missionary Society worked to raise funds to help pay for the new church and furnishings. They also supported at least one Methodist Episcopal missionary to India, Miss Ruth Jane.
January 9th, 1927. Dear Reedley friends, you cannot imagine how surprised I was to receive such a big box of things, all for my very own. I was very happy to receive the lovely bedspread. It is nice to have a white one. And the raisins were so good. When the fruit comes from home, it seems better. Thanks too for the bloomers, hose, washclothes, handkerchiefs, soap, powder, garters, aprons, and everything. Some thoughtful person even included a watch ribbon. We had enough handkerchiefs so we could give each girl 2. I was so glad. Chinese girls used to learn handkerchiefs at school, so it's nice to have enough so you can enforce your teaching. I bought toothbrushes with part of the money, so each girl received one. 2 classes received toothpaste. They all received a pencil, pen, a blotter, an eraser, and a tablet. So you see, Santa Claus believes in being useful to his Chinese girls. Ruth Jane, missionary, Kuchien, China.
According to the Reedley exponent, many of the Missionary Society meeting programs featured missionaries for information on foreign missions of the Methodist Episcopal Church.
The Missionary Society presented an entertaining program on India at the reception for new members. The parlors and main auditorium were attractively decorated with spring blossoms and ferns. Mrs. O.G. Dressler gave a splendid talk on India, her little daughter, Margaret, being dressed in the costume worn by the children of India. Miss Agnes McBriar, Mesdames A.C. Strickler, Ben H. Carlson, and Frank Frayne met the guests at the door wearing oriental drapes, which Mrs. Dressler brought with her to this country. Mrs. J.C. Glasgow entertained the company with a solo, In the Presence of His Heart, written by a girl of India. Following the meeting, a committee of ladies served tea, candy, and oriental cake. Reported in the Reedley Exponent, February 23, 1923.
Then the stock market crashed in 1929. The depression that followed was much worse than the depression of the late 1890s. Local farmers lost their land, businesses closed, and the Methodist Episcopal congregation was in danger of losing their new church. The ladies' aid societies of the church went to work, doing what they could to pay the interest on the building loan.
We gave chicken dinners. We had ice cream socials. We had strawberry festivals. Do you know what they are? Well, if you eat strawberries with a piece of cake at home, that's all it is, strawberries and cake. But if you go out in a crowd and pay for your strawberries and cake, that is a strawberry festival. And the bazaars we had. But I mustn't talk about bazaars. The memory of them makes my back ache. I remember those moneyless days, and that is what they were, just moneyless.
Oh, the ice cream sociables we gave. You couldn't get ice cream as you can now. We borrowed every ice cream freezer in town. Everybody brought eggs, milk, and cream. We had to order our ice, especially from Fresno. Everybody would turn a crank. Mrs. Carpenter was the boss cake cutter. Those were hard times, but our work was not spent in vain. Mrs. Bell Miles.
For nearly 22 years, alarming debt hung over the heads of the Reedley Methodists, but the people worked and sacrificed in order to carry on God's work. In November 1943, the congregation burned the mortgage and declared themselves debt-free. In 1939, the Methodist Episcopal Church, the Methodist Episcopal Church South, and the Protestant Methodist Church merged to become the Methodist Episcopal Church. At that time, the various women's home and foreign missionary societies became known as the Women's Society of Christian Service, or WSCS. In 1968, when the Methodist Episcopal Church and the United Brethren Church merged as one denomination, their name became the United Methodist Church. In 1973, WSCS became United Methodist Women. Every woman who attends the United Methodist Church is a member of the United Methodist Women. She may be an active member or a supportive member. Young or old, if one is committed to the purpose of the United Methodist Women, engaging in mission, study, personal growth, and social action, she can be a member. The emblem of the United Methodist Women, the white cross and tongues of fire, are ancient symbols of the church. They remind us of the opportunities and obligations of discipleship, The shape of the emblem is fluid and free-flowing, suggesting change and mobility. All the women who came before us were at the forefront of movements for change. They pioneered in service for the church, at home, and in foreign lands. The purpose of the United Methodist Women is to be a community of women, to know God, to develop a creative and supportive fellowship, to expand concepts of mission. Throughout the years, the various ladies' aid societies of the Reedley United Methodist Church have strived to uphold this mission, both at home and in causes throughout the world. They refurbished parsonages, carpeted the church, provided draperies for social hall windows, paid for the janitor and care for the church lawns, purchased paint, remodeled the kitchen. They have provided food for coffee hours, for funerals, and for potlucks. They have supported the Reedley Blood Bank, the Brown Bag Food Program, Partners in English, Sunday School, and Vacation Bible School. They have provided baby blankets, sewing kits, health kits, school kits, and flood kits for the United Methodist Committee on Relief. They provided school supplies and Easter baskets for the children living in the local Marjorie Mason shelter. They have funded their mission projects with rummage sales, the Elegant Elephant Sale, salad lunches, and church bazaars. They have volunteered their time in the support of the Spring Garden Tour, the used book sale, and now for Resurrected Books. The Reedley unit supports the national organization by giving generously to mission and supporting a variety of other mission projects in our own community. The legacy of those 8 women in Boston is alive and well right here at the First United Methodist Church in Reedley. Ours is a group of women who are faithful and courageous, who have been serving their church since 1893. We have prayed, planned, organized, labored, and supported local, national, and worldwide causes that affect the lives of countless individuals, especially those of women and children. As we begin the celebration of our church's 125th anniversary, we can also be proud of our own 122 years of service. Through good times and hard times, the women of this church have stood together, working for God and striving to accomplish John Wesley's admonition.
Do all the good you can, by all the means you can, in all the ways you can, in all the places you can, at all the times you can, to all the people you can, as long as ever you can.